I paid her to do that. I run a YouTube channel called Black Nerd Comedy. So I make videos every week, Black Nerd rants, reviews, event coverage, lots of fun little videos I make every single week. And I'm at Black Nerd on Twitter if you want to follow me. So that's what I do.
Okay then. I'm like, hold on, I don't really know what I do. I make stuff and yeah, I cosplay, but then obviously I'm not wearing a costume today. Hope you guys don't mind. I've been cosplaying for about 15 years, but actually doing photo shoots and working with a lot of my friends in the community and video game companies for about 7 years now. So it's pretty fun. And I started welding and casting, so it's really fun too. Yeah.
It's my turn. I'm Crystal Clark. I'm the founder of geek.com, and it focuses mostly on geek girl fashion, but I also focus on art and cosplay, mostly focusing on women characters because I believe that we need more attention. But anyhow, if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's also geek.
You know, we did have we want to represent people of different cultural backgrounds, and so we need someone else green. You know, it's very important to us. So
underneath it's Chicana, but now it's green.
My name is Tamara Brooks. I have a site called Misfits of Sci-Fi and I'm also on Twitter at Misfits Tamara. I'm basically a lifelong geek. I was a kid watching Super Friends and reruns and stuff, and Superman flying, comic cup, reversing the Earth. It took a turn back time that never made sense to me even if I was or 6, and I was like, okay, whatever, all that. Oh.
We got too much. We're going to go into your background just a little bit. So, well, to start us off, I thought it would be important to kind of give the audience context of you guys. We all know growing up, and this day and age of being a nerd or being a geek is a lot different because there's tons of different heroes, tons of different examples, tons of different just different representations in Hollywood, comics, and TV and film. But I know for many of us growing up, it was harder and it was a little more difficult. So, for me, I remember growing up, my parents immigrated here from Korea about a year before I was born. And as I grew, my first love was Star Trek, and within that was my kind of hero in that was not Kirk, it wasn't Spock, but it was Sulu, because it was the first time that I saw an Asian American represented at all in pop culture. But really from that point on, I loved Star Wars and of course comics and all that, but I really struggled to really find someone who kind of looked like myself. And within that, I really struggled with how important was it to find someone that looked like myself. I didn't know if that was supposed to be a big thing or also to sort of suppress that. And so I know for me that's kind of where I started from. So Andre, how about you? What was it like for you growing up?
Well, I grew up in North Carolina, where I think you get arrested for being a nerd there. So,
in North Carolina, you get arrested for being black. So.
You're from both, yeah. The best way I can describe my growing up is I was a Venn diagram. There was all the black stuff that was going on, all the nerd stuff that was going on, and a little tiny section was where I was at. But that means there's a whole bunch of black stuff I didn't know and a whole bunch of nerd stuff I didn't know. So I just tried to make do with what I could, depending on what environment I was in. And as far as heroes growing up, I think one of the first ones for me was actually Winston from Ghostbusters. Because I was watching this is a good movie, and then when Winston shows up and gets the job, I'm like, oh, now it's going to go down. Probably going to mess with these ghosts. I was all excited about that. Only to be followed up by Zach, the Black Mighty Morphin Power Ranger. That was my man growing up. So it was. I would think that was always my thing growing up. Was trying to get as much black and as much nerd stuff in me at the same time and missing out on a lot of both sides. So I'm catching up on both rap music and comic books.
I have a lot in common with him. I think we might be the same age, I don't know. But I grew up in Oklahoma, Oklahoma City. It was Okmulgee. Have you guys heard of that place? Yeah, I know. I can tell. It's kind of obvious. It wasn't that bad. I really didn't. I grew up during a time where it was glowworms, Rainbow Bright, and stuff like that. So it's all made up stuff, like all the robots and stuff. So I never really, strawberry shortcake. I didn't realize a lot of like racism around me. I was just like, there was barely any Asians, so I was like, oh, okay. And everyone was like, oh yeah, your hair's so dark. And then I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, whatever, because all we thought about was like, all we talked about was Transformers and, like robots, right? Like Silverhawks and all that stuff. And they're like, okay, I never really experienced racism. But I did like notice one thing. It was like Power Rangers. It was the Yellow Ranger, right? So I was like, oh, we could be heroes too. That's interesting. So then, that was my experience. But it was pretty interesting growing up. I'll talk more about it later.
I actually grew up in San Diego, so there's a lot of Mexicans in San Diego, so that wasn't an issue there. But growing up, I remember, I grew up around the same time, and I was all about Jen. And I feel very, very lucky that I grew up during the time that Jen came out, because Jen was actually very great about representing different cultures. And the drummer eventually left to go do like fashion stuff, and Raja came in, and she's Mexican American. And so I watched that at 6 years old, really excited. She's a drummer. I actually ended up getting a drum set when I was 7. Otherwise, I did notice that, there's a lot of cool people on TV and comics, and I never really noticed. They don't really look like me. And then, being a girl, I'd always get Barbies as gifts, and they're all tall and blonde and blue-eyed, and every single one of them, I had a big collection of like 25 Barbies, and they all were blonde hair, blue eyes. And when I got to that age where I started realizing, oh, is this what's pretty? I don't look like this. And then that's when I started feeling like, oh, maybe that's not okay.
I think we're all kind of in the same age range, because it's, your Gem and your Thundercats and your Silverhawks and your Rainbow Bright and et cetera, et cetera. But the biggest deal to me as a kid, and it's still the biggest deal, if you can see my last one, she was like the end all be all to me. She was everything that, I felt like people should be. They're kind and strong, everything, very accepting and wanting to work things out with survival, all that kind of stuff. But, in terms of representation, I didn't really see a ton of people who looked like me on TV. And I'm mixed, so I have the benefit of being able to relate to, quote-unquote white people, because I have, Irish and all this other kind of stuff in my family, and also be able to relate to another side, because I see that around. But still, I did notice when I was a kid, I was like, I don't really see a lot of, it was a big deal when it's like, there's that one black character, or there's that one Latino character, or there's that one Asian character. And, I also didn't notice, I remember noticing stereotypes really early, because it was more like, because I didn't realize it was stereotypes because I was so young, but I realized the trends. So it's like, oh, okay, you see a person of color, and they're a gang member, or they're getting arrested, or they're doing this. And so that was always kind of a big deal to me.
Yeah, okay. Well, this whole idea of multi-ethnic heroes is actually part of a much larger, broader conversation. It's really representing anyone whose demographic feels marginalized. And so that can include, this battle was really preceded by, not really preceded, but alongside women's issue. Women represented well in pop culture, and we'll talk about maybe even the sexualization of women and all that sort of stuff is a whole other separate issue, but similar. Gay, lesbian, that whole thing is a whole other similar issue. And so, this whole conversation is really about, how do we find representation in pop culture? And so, I'm going to ask you guys, and if you guys have any questions on this, as you look at kind of the landscape of pop culture today, and look at, we have gone a long way in the past few decades, but as you look at it, state of it today, the good and the bad, and sort of how we've progressed and how we are still sort of stuck. As you look at comics and TV, film, and even in cosplay, as some of you guys are into, where do you think we're at?
It's better.
Yeah.
It's not where it should be.
Yeah. Like, you have an example or
Well, for example, so yesterday Edward James Olmos was here, and he talked about, it was awesome. And he went to his panel, and I also got to talk to him, and I was telling him that his character was amazing because his name was Guillermo Adama. And he said he would refuse the role if they changed his name. And it didn't matter that they didn't really go into his background as far as his ethnicity is concerned, but the fact that he was leading a fleet and in this role and is a Mexican American is pretty major. You know, he's not a gangster, he's not a drug dealer, he was leading. And so that was a big deal. And you know, the president is a woman in the series too, so that whole thing was awesome. But then to hear about, like, for example, a superhero movie fronted by a woman and all the studios are like, oh, no. Or a superhero or just someone of color in the lead. No, unless it's like Will Smith. But, which is great, but there's other actors of color. So, yeah, good and bad.
And I think that, you know, a lot of people assume, because I get into occasional exchanges on Twitter with various people, because I talk about this stuff on a kind of regular basis, but I think a common misconception is when you talk about diversity, one, people assume that you're black when you talk about it, but they don't know what you're like. And two, they assume that you mean black people. Like, I don't know why that is. When we talk about diversity, and I think I can probably, I think everyone says it, it's about inclusion of everyone. Because if I look around this room, there's all kinds of different people. I grew up with all different groups of people. So when I look on TV, and if I look at weird stuff, the stuff that I love that represents, you know, a lot of core values that I have, that I can see reflected in that, I want that to reflect the people I see around me. And so, you know, like, I realized I would always like the redhead the best on shows, and I realized that the only white people that you don't see a lot are redheads. So I think that's why I kind of like gravitated towards them.
Maybe
so,
gingers in a room.
Ginger in the room.
All right, we feel you. We'll include you. You're one of us, all right?
So I mean, it definitely is better. I mean, you know, before DC kind of wiped its continuity, it had, you know, the 3 or 4 generations of heroes there, and so the youngest heroes and the ones that were the most diverse. They brought over, you know, Static. They had, you know, the new BB, everything like that. Everything's really diverse. They're trying to kind of continue that in the New 52, but it's really hard because, you know, the default for storytelling, our hero is a straight white male for a good 4 years. And if it wasn't a straight white male, it was a straight white female. So you didn't really get the characters of color that would actually be played by people of color until about the 60s. And so, you know, we have a lot of catching up to do, and, you know, our hero can be anyone. And a lot of people are kind of in an antiquated, you know, thought process of our hero has to be this default. But it can be anyone. You know, like...
Do y'all believe that, sometimes we have a reaction to stereotypes, but do you believe that all stereotypes are bad?
No, I don't think so. Because the thing is, I think that stereotypes are kind of true in a sense, because I eat rice, yeah. And
fried chicken is delicious.
And people, I'm Vietnamese, so they always say, you're Vietnamese, you must like pho. And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty good. It's our thing, you know? Yeah, I guess it's true. Some of the stereotypes they talk about, I mean, to me, I don't see color. I see people. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think everyone here just sees everyone for who they are, right? So sometimes when people come up to me, they're like, oh, you do anime characters all the time. You're so Asian. I'm all, I am Asian. What do you think? Like, well, yes, my parents gave me Ranma when I was growing up. They threw it at me. Yeah, like Doraemon. That was my first manga. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, throw it back at her? Like, you know, that was my first thing. So growing up, of course, we're going to, like, you know, have those things about us. Like, of course, we're going to eat rice or like noodles and stuff, and then we're going to watch anime. But everyone watches anime. So, and the thing is, like, we don't have much time, so I will, like, include this. I love that you guys are all about women empowerment, because it's not like women everything. It's not like in our heads, it's not like that. It's like, literally, we want to represent women in the truest, like, the best form, right? So that's why a lot of times I cosplay male characters. Not because I want to be a dude, you know, like, I don't want to be a dude. It's because I think that women embody those characteristics too. You know, we are strong. We can kick ass. You know, like, we can do anything a man can do. But we also like to have our hair nice. And like the outfit too. So then I think gender bent characters are awesome too. But I do have problems with some things about like, oh, you're Asian, and we can get into that later, but oh, you're Asian and you're doing that character. But we'll talk about that later.
Stereotypes.
Well, I was going to say, I actually did a video about that recently because of the whole, I don't know if you guys heard, there was a lady by the name of Julian Huff who decided she wanted to dress as one of the characters from Orange is the New Black, the black character, and she painted herself brown, black, yeah. More like Soul Man 1986. I'm old people, but it was a weird thing. So I and opening that up, I said, is it okay to cosplay as another race? Because I obviously cosplay. I cosplay as like Mario and it's like, and I never thought about it. I was just like, oh, I like this character, and so I just basically said like, yeah, you can dress up. If a white person wants to be Black Panther or whatever, go for it. Just before you pick up that makeup from Brown, just kind of give yourself second thoughts. And it was interesting, the comments, because, because YouTube comments are so nice and sweet. But it was interesting. Yeah, it was interesting because people were like, well, what's the big deal? Oh, so you can be a white person, I can't be a black person, well, what's my right? And the person was like, dude, if you're white, you're good. Like, you don't need to, you don't need to come to our side. Trust me, the dark side is not always that great. But it was funny. I mean, in some cases, I could see that it was a generational thing, that they maybe just have not seen that. But on the other case, it was like, people were trying to act like on one end, oh, we should all be together, what's the big deal? And I was like, well, let's go look at these other pictures of these people who actually did legitimate blackface for Halloween. People were dressed up as like Trayvon Martin and like doing the old school like black and white. I'm like, it's still a weird thing in there. So my feeling was, yes, if you like a character, dress up as a character. If you want to be a Ghostbuster, you can be a Ghostbuster. But if you got 4 white guys Ghostbusters, you don't have to have one of you guys paint black to be Winston. It's just like everybody can just be whatever character they want to be, because then you're honoring the character. When you start trying to be a little bit of the extra, like, oh, I'm gonna put makeup on, oh, I'm gonna talk like this now. It's like now you're not being the character, you're insinuating a stereotype, and so you gotta, common sense.
I do wonder about that because people of color see themselves so infrequently that we're used to not having to look like the person that we admire versus, like people, quote unquote, that are so accustomed to having everybody that they relate to look like them that they have like some sort of cognitive dissonance. They're like, let's put on makeup on my face, and they just can't help themselves. So I wonder if that has anything to do with it.
I could see that, and then I could see a mix of also just not knowing your history.
Yeah, that's true.
Of like what that meant in the past and what people went through and why it's not okay. If you don't know the history, you think, of course, oh, it's a big deal.
I'm just more character accurate.
Yeah.
One disclaimer I forgot to mention as I represent this panel is we love white people. Right? We love white people.
I've dated
we just say that. They're awesome. White people are awesome. Like, mayonnaise is awesome. Katy Perry's awesome. Like, we love white people. Okay, so this is not about, like, when we get these multi-ethnic conversations, sometimes it can tend to feel like, hey, we're kind of bashing one group or another. We're not doing that at all. We're all family here. We're all nerds. We all love each other. This is just help progress the conversation and just speak honestly and openly. And so, please don't take anything that we're saying as, this one group is doing this, whatever. We're trying to just facilitate conversation and just exchange ideas.
Yeah, because I was going to say, because sometimes the opposite is also too much too. Like, I'm proud to be a black person, but I'm not going everywhere saying like, I'm a black person, you got these things for me because I'm black. It's like, okay, we got you. And the same thing with women and everything else. It's like, it's about just being proud of who you are and also being able to enjoy the things that you love and not feeling like, you should never feel like I can't enjoy or I can't be a part of this because of my background. I think that's really what it boils down to, is that everyone just wants to enjoy it. But yeah, there's some people I'm like, all right, I get it. You're a girl geek. All right, I get it. I got it. Thank you.
I agree.
Well, before I go to the audience, let me throw out one last question about one thing that I think sort of has driven pop culture is the representation of superheroes, specifically in movies, in cinema. That seems to have really driven this whole sort of pop culture explosion, and the Avengers has sort of been this crown jewel in our whole pop culture movement. And ironically enough, it's kind of started years ago with Blade, Wesley Snipes, and that Marvel character sort of was the launch of the modern day movie, superhero movie mythology, and But since that time, like we've mentioned, there's been a real lack of real representation on the screen. And so my question to you is that is the key, one of the big keys to sort of progressing more diversity in Hollywood is taking one of our existing heroes and changing their race? Or is it trying to fast track a original brand new hero and try to get him up on the screen, which seems really difficult these days? It's hard to make any movie, let alone one that has a ton of history behind it. And so what do you guys think? What's the key there? Do we take Batman, who is now Ben Affleck? Do we turn him into a black guy? Do we take Superman, make him a Mexican guy? Like, what?
Don't you mean the Human Torch?
Let's talk about that. Well, what do you guys think?
I had a video about that. That was a fun one too. It's funny. I have like 300-something videos, and then nothing to do with race. But you make 2 about race. Oh, Andre, stop talking about race so much. Yes. So in case you know, they're rebooting Fantastic Four because they should. And there's been a lot. It's really close. I think it's probably gonna happen. Michael B. Jordan, not the basketball player. Michael B. Jordan, he was in the Chronicles, is in talks to play the Human Torch in the new movie. And the reason why that, as opposed to like maybe a Clark Kent or Bruce Wayne, is like that's a character where, you know, the Fantastic Four is like the powers really kind of represent them, not so much the mythology and the history so much. So it is a place, it is one of those characters you go, they could probably change his race and maybe get away with it. But you still had a bunch of people who are still like, oh, well, what does that mean for Sue? You know, we can't have a black guy and a white girl because they're brothers and sisters. Like, yeah, because adoption never existed. So it was a very interesting thing. But I think that in some cases you're going to have to do it because you're either going to have to do that with some of the main characters, or you're going to have to bring up characters that are of their race. You know, there is talks about Black Panther getting a movie, but you're going to have to bring more of these characters up and put them in movies, even if it's just minor roles. Like we got Falcon in the next the Captain America movie. So I mean, they either have to show up or you're going to have to make changes because there just wasn't that many at the time that some of these things were written. So
yeah, and I think that the main thing, and I mean, we always talk about the character, like the pillars of a character, you know, any kind of hero, any kind of adaptation. And so long as those are true, you kind of have a lot more leeway to work around them, provided that you're writing them properly. Now, speaking of that, it's like you can change the race or the sex of some characters depending on what their background is. You cannot have a black Captain America. They're not printing up, you know, trading cards of a black Captain America in the 1940s. That doesn't make sense. Similarly, you cannot have a white Storm because it's Storm. But there's a lot of other characters where I'm like, you know, there's nothing about your background that particularly says you have to be one thing or another. So, you can, like, I brought up the fact, and this is another one of my fun moments here with somebody. I brought up the fact that based on Peter Parker's origin, it is less likely that he was white if he was created in modern day versus the 60s, or again, the default. Because a kid from New York, kind of smart, goes on a field trip, gets moved by his father. He lives with his aunt in a house that's not even the greatest neighborhood, but it's still a house. It's a nice little neighborhood. There's nothing about that screams anything in particular, but given the diversity of New York, there is an equal, if not less, chance that he was white in order to be white. So, you know, I got people really mad when we talk about Peter Parker. Like, well, he's not a mask, he can be anybody. But that's true, but everybody knows that he's Peter Parker and Peter Parker is white. So there's a lot of characters you can change. Wonder Woman, there's a range that you can go. I don't think
much more Greek.
Yeah, and absolutely much more Greek. There's all kinds of characters.
Besides, does anyone want to see Nick Fury turn back into David Hasselhoff? Does anyone want to see that? All of us, right? Nick Fury for life, right? Samuel Jackson for life.
So I just think that is something that should go into consideration. And, you know, again, so long as you get the actual character right and the actor is acting it properly, then there shouldn't be that much of a problem. But, you know how people do it.
And I was just going to say, like, I agree with both of you guys. I think there's certain characters that you could change and certain that are just so iconic and you will freak people out if you change it. So that is a concern. But there are some that could be changed, and there is an opportunity to come up with new characters. I think that's completely valid. And I think part of the thing, too, and I don't know if we really touched on this, was, like, why is that even important? Because we're visual people, and it's important to see. I don't know if you guys, I recently ran across this piece of art. It was beautiful. It was Uhura, and like looking down with her hand extended to a little girl. And with it came a quote and I'm paraphrasing, but it's from Whoopi Goldberg, and she said seeing Uhura on TV was like an amazing moment for her, because she's yelled at her mom, she's like, Mom, come here to the TV. There's a black woman on TV and she's not a maid. This is amazing. Like, I didn't know this was possible. So it's just, you can be told over and over that, oh, you can be whatever you want to be, you can do this, you can do that, but when you never see someone that looks like you or visual, it's hard to believe it. So...
And also, when we do get movies with characters of color, if they can not whitewash them, that'd be awesome. Last Airbender. Thrones, yes, everyone knows about that.
We will never speak of Last Airbender.
I didn't even hear what you said.
Exactly.
You saw that movie,
It was a great TV movie that was animated still, and all the characters were right.
Well, what do you guys think when it comes to heroes and pop culture heroes? Like, is it changing heroes and ethnicities? I mean, what do you guys think? You had a question back here.
It was on a different subject.
Okay, go ahead.
On the stereotypes. I'm personally against stereotypes just because usually when stereotypes rise, it's the most negative. And I remember when Precious came out, and Precious was, to me, I thought it was a good movie, but the bad part was hearing people say, man, I didn't know that's how it was in black neighborhoods. It's like, I'm from the South Bronx, and I came out pretty fine, and that was not my experience. And there's this African writer who wrote a book about a father who's very abusive to her kids, and to his kids. And she said a white guy came up to her and said, "Oh my God, I didn't know African families were like that." And then her response was, "Well, I didn't know all white men were serial killers because she saw American Psycho." And that's the difference I see. So I like it when people don't rush to the stereotypes. I'd like to see a broad spectrum of a community, not just the ones that everyone is familiar with.
I mean, like, stereotypes are reductive, and that's the problem with them, because they boil everything that a person or a group of people are about down to one thing. So that is definitely an issue. But I do think that racists ruin everything, and that's why all the bad ones are prominent. So
racists ruin everything. That's right. That's pretty much it. Yeah. But I'm not so much against stereotypes. I just think they have to be a starting point, and it's got to evolve beyond that. Because I think on TV and film, like what I'm most pleased when I see one, and then it takes the character much farther beyond it, and they evolve, and you really realize, oh, there's so much more to this person. And after a while, like for instance, one of my favorite characters on TV right now is Glenn from The Walking Dead, and it's like he's kind of started out kind of shy and timid and kind of squirrely, and then like he's really evolved to like this hero, and then loving sort of husband, I guess, and he's really a protector, and really he's been a really refreshing character because he's not just seen as an Asian dude, he's really just seen as a real helpful part of the community. So
yeah, I was just going to mention that's the thing about stereotypes too. I think with most stereotypes there's a slight truth to it, but that's the thing, it's one-sided and it's a caricature. You don't realize that they're even a person, and it's important to move beyond that. Like, it's fine if Glenn is Asian, and that's fantastic, but then it's not all about him being Asian. It's him being a person.
And even the African American characters it's not about that either. In fact, Walking Dead's gotten very diverse. Have you noticed? It's been amazing. And so I think maybe the key to racial reconciliation is zombies. I think that's the key. You bring the zombies on, and it fixes a lot of problems. And so creates a few more other problems. But anyway, you had a question?
Us as a group now, and us as a generation nowadays, will we ever be open-minded? Will we ever be grown up enough to get past color, get past female, male, and just look at who's better for the role, who's better for the job? And I like it because I like it, not because, he's white, not because he's black, and so forth. We just like the work because we like the work. And if a female did it, great. If a guy did it, great. It doesn't matter where it comes from as long as the work is good. Will we ever come to that? It's my question.
Oh, I definitely have something to say about that because actually it's within, it sounds cheesy as hell and I don't really like being cheesy, but the thing is, it's as long as you express it, you take it onto yourself to tell people. A lot of people are afraid to speak up against a lot of these issues, but I I, for one, and I think everyone here, takes it upon themselves to not be afraid to express how they feel about certain subjects. For example, they would like to just put me in cosplayer, which really annoys the crap out of me. I didn't necessarily just cosplay. That's what my pictures are, but my life is different. So it's like, it's different. It's not only race. It's about just cornering us into one thing, which is really annoying. So I try to every day speak out on certain subjects I feel really passionate about. Try to, like every day make a post about something different, like empower people, be positive, instead of like complaining all day on your Facebook. I mean, the thing is, if you want change, you do it for yourself and the people around you, and helping each other. So, yeah, be that. Yeah.
And I think something you tapped on is actually, I think, a broader thing, which I think incorporates race and gender and a lot of things in general. We're dealing with a situation right now where something, geekdom basically, has been this niche thing that's now becoming very mainstream. A lot of people who were either into this stuff but never were expressive about it, or didn't know about it but are now learning about it, are coming into this moment. You can see in the comic book, San Diego Comic-Con is a great example of just how massive it's gotten. And what you have now is you have a lot of people who have been in this realm for a very long time, feeling in a way like their identity is being lost, because that was the thing that defined them. Was, oh, I'm this geek and no one else understands what I'm into. Now you got all these people who are like, well, no, I don't want to understand it, so now you don't feel like you have an individuality to yourself. So you have to figure out a way to push them back. Well, those girls aren't real geeks, they're just acting that way to get entertainment. Oh, you can't be this cosplayer because you're a different race. Everything that I can do to make sure that my box stays in my box. And I think that's the complete opposite thing that we need to be doing as geeks. If someone's interested in the thing that you're interested in, it should be more welcoming. I mean, I've seen guys go, oh man, I can't find a girl because I like all this geeky stuff. I've seen couples that have come together where the guy or the girl knew nothing about this world, but because they care about that person, they learn more about this world, and now they're cosplaying together as couples. It's like, that's the cool things that can happen when you have this knowledge and you're sharing it without being so judgmental. And I think if we did more of that in general, then all these other things will kind of trickle down to where we won't worry so much about race, we won't worry so much about gender. We just worry about, like, these are just things to enjoy. This is going to be fun. This is like toys and collectibles and cosplay, and we should be having a good time. Why everyone is always like, angry.
So serious.
Like, what the hell? We're supposed to be, if you don't like this, get out. Like, go do something else. Because we should be enjoying this. Let's all just enjoy it.
Well, one of the key. Hold on a second. One of the keys in just everything you talked about, all this content that we're involved with, really comes down to the content creators. And who is at the core of content creation, whether it's in books, comics, TV, or film, and are they representing us well? And how important is it to you guys that those people who are creating content look like us? Like, do you feel like, hey, if a white gal or a dude can write about the African American experience, then that's great? Or is that okay? Would you rather have? I mean, obviously all would rather be more represented at the core of content creation. But do you guys gravitate towards an Asian American writer versus Caucasian writer? What do you guys think about that?
I think it helps when someone is of that race and they're writing about that person, mainly because they have that experience that they are a person, rather than someone that's never really encountered or grew up amongst or lived amongst people of different races. But at the same time, if writers that are maybe writing about Black characters or Latin characters and they are not of that race, please consult is what I ask. Because when you just, I think they do this, and then it's like a stereotype caricature and it really pisses me off. Like, you could ask somebody, get to know somebody, and then you will be a better writer, and it will represent people better.
Yeah, every time I see an Asian American on screen, I'm just waiting for them to do karate. Like, I'm just waiting. I just wait, and then it happens, and I'm just like...
And they do.
They always do.
And they always karate chop something.
Yeah, always, right? And like, I'm watching, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agent Man's waiting for her, and then she's like, I'm like, there it is.
We're just kidding, right?
Okay. Well, and I do think that what it all boils down to, I was talking about cores of characters, and that's what we're talking about. A really well-written character, no matter what they look like on the exterior, are built like people. You know, they have internal monologues. They have problems with people, and they're just built like regular people. Because a lot of us have stuff in common, but we're not all the same people. And so I think that it's the most successful writers right now are the ones that get that. So I don't have a problem with Gail Simone writing any kind of thing. I don't have a problem with like Brian Michael Bendis for the most part, writing different people because he was writing people that just happen to be us. Yeah, and that's kind of one of the more important things. And I do think it does help to have a lot more diverse creators because it just helps diversify the pool of voices. So it's not necessarily specifically important that the person who's writing a black character is black, but I think it was a lot more important in the 90s with David Duffy and all that stuff. I think it's a lot more important. It was more important at that time because there was such a void like that. And so now it's filling in a little bit more. So it could go wherever. I do that.
Yeah. I think I said this at San Diego. I'm like, if you can write an alien, an alternate dimension, a whole different Earth, I think you can write a black person. I think it's not as hard as those things. So it's kind of funny when people are like, can write all these fantasy characters, but then you ask them to write something of a different race just to be a regular person. Like, oh, I don't know anything about that.
Just write a bad person.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we have 5 minutes. Let's pick questions. I'm going to let only one of you guys answer so we can fire through these questions. And so I saw this gentleman in the beard. Go ahead. Speak up.
I was just going to make a statement that I do think it's a generational thing in that I grew up in the 70s and it was a lot harder to be a nerd, but I think it's amazing now. And I think it's so cool that there's just a whole room full of people that I walk in here, I feel like I found my child.
Aww.
It's great. And I think it's a lot easier to meet people you have things in common with now. I wear nerd shirts as sort of an acid test. It'll start a conversation with people. They're like, oh yeah, so you know Dr. Who. You're like, whatever. So I think it's a really good concept.
One thing that makes me sad about being Asian is that I cannot grow a beard like yours. That's an epic beard, sir. Epic. Okay. In the back, right behind you. You, yeah.
So we're talking about representation in comics and changing characters' races. And one thing that I really like about DC Comics is that they question into Renee Montoya, who's a bigger woman, of course. The question they made Ruby was set forward in the Jaime Reyes. One thing is, in terms of representation, is it more progressive when characters are like when characters are like Renee Montoya, where it's like their ethnicity isn't really put into question, they just kind of are, as opposed to like Jaime Reyes, who the stories are just as good, but his race does actually play a part in the story.
One person answer that?
Well, I think it depends on the story and it depends on the character. Now, for Renee, it just so happens, and that's the way she's set up, versus Jaime, where his whole origin is based on this is his town, this is where he's from, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of Latinos in his town, etc., etc. So it's I don't think it's a question of which is more progressive, it's just we need more of both, Yeah.
Hey guys. So growing up, I actually didn't really like the mainstream because I knew no one like me, and I'm mixed. I'm Asian and white and black. So
you're the future.
In the future. So I tended to go for the more the indie comics. That seemed to be where all the ethnicity, but they were all so dark and depressing, and the story sucked, and they were killing each other, and there's karate or something. So like now there's a lot more. I'm wondering if there's anything now that you guys are reading that not only has great ethnic characters but a great fun story.
Too many things.
Great question.
I read manga, so like a lot of times people talk about race and stuff like that, but I read manga. It's like you don't even know what they are because their eyes are so big. You're like, they can't be. They're like mutants, But I really like Shingeki, this Attack on Titan. It's really good. Of course, you guys know. I mean, everybody knows it, but I think it's great because they have. It doesn't really matter who it is. You all are, powerful people that can kill these titans. So it's like they bring in different kind of races or girls, boys, and the main characters are like chicks, so it's pretty awesome. So if you like manga, then Attack on Titan is probably my favorite right now. So
let's do one more question. How about? I'm sorry, I can go over here.
Well, on the subject of character creation, I wondered what your opinions were on Pacific Rim, because I saw that twice in theaters. I loved it.
We can speak about Tonto and Moderator.
I like Pacific. I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
It's like Power Rangers the movie for me. But, yeah.
And I'm trying to remember every single character, but of the characters I do remember, they were just a person, which was very important. I mean, Idris Elba in that role is amazing, and you know they're not he's black or whatever. He is who he is, and he was a great character. And it seemed like a lot of the characters the same thing, even if they were a different race. Just an awesome character. So I thought it was fantastic.
We'll switch your question in. Hey, come back! You come back.
Last question.
I know. Go ahead.
No, but hey, we'll squeeze one more question in. So.
No, I was just wanted to make a comment about how you're saying kind of changing your race and costume. There was a time where I actually, the show True Blood, I dressed up just quick. I had the Burlap shirt and I had a red wig. Just threw it on, and the whole night they called me Tara. And it kind of bothered me because I'm like, well, Tara's on the show, yes, but she never has ever worn a Burlap shirt, so it's kind of like you're putting me in
red hair.
Sometimes like, and I was kind of going more for Arlene, who wears the shirt and has the red wig, and I had the makeup, smeared, and to kind of get that, I didn't feel I needed to put on white makeup to get that point across that I was Tara. That's kind of how I feel with some characters. I don't feel you need to put on black makeup to get that point across, but you see some races do that more than me trying to go for white. So it's kind of touchy. I do kind of I don't say I get offended, but when some people go for blackface, they don't even recognize that skin tone has different variations. So a lot of times you put on blackface and you represent an African American character who, when I see them, I know that they're a lighter complexion. It will come off different. It's like if I was to put on whiteface or even go as an Asian character or Hispanic character, if I put on just pure white face and blue eyes, that would be kind of insensitive to saying that every white person is just pale, or anything like that. So
they mostly are, but I think we're to close it down. So thank you so much. Well, let's do this. I'll make a final comment, but real quick, Andre, where can we learn more about you and your work?
You can look me up on YouTube, Black Nerd Comedy, youtube.com/Black Nerd Comedy. You can follow me on Twitter @Black Nerd, and do not be offended. I dressed up as a Smurf once and did blueface. So.
All my names on the internet as Vampy Bit Me. So Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, stuff.
And for me, Geek Pinata, it's Geek, and then Pinata, Pinata. You don't have to do the little squiggly above it. It's fine as is, and that's on every social network as well.
MisfitsOfSci-Fi.com, also Misfits of Sci-Fi on YouTube, and Misfits Tamara on Twitter.
I'm only on MySpace. It's going to make a comeback.
Bring it back, Tony. Bring it back.
It's coming back. All of our Twitter accounts are on in the program guide, so definitely check that out. My last comment is just that this whole multicultural conversation and for us to see multi-ethnic heroes, it's up to all of us. And so we need to be a voice. We need to speak up. We need to Twitter and write about it. And through comics, TV, or film, if it's going to happen, and if change is going to happen, we have to be at the center of it. So keep pressing forward. And lastly, I want to say thank you guys for being here. And just to make this memorable, I've never before have sustained an injury. Look at that! Look at that! And a panel. Yeah! So this will definitely be one I'll remember for a long time. And so let's get together and take a picture. But thank you guys for being here, and thank you. Have a great Comikaze.